I want to drill down, Chuck, on the issue that I think is going to be very much at the forefront, probably the number one issue you're going to have to deal with, assuming that you're confirmed, and that's the issue of our relationship with Iran and where we go in the future, short term as well as long term. Now, you wrote in your book, and I quote, "We blundered into Iraq because of flawed intelligence, flawed assumptions, flawed judgments, and ideologically driven motives. We must not repeat these errors with Iran, and the best way to avoid them is to maintain an effective dialogue." You then go on to advocate, again, and I quote, "for a direct and strategic diplomatic initiative." Now, I heard you in your opening comments say that your position on Iran is prevention, not containment when it comes to their nuclear weaponization. Now, I want you to expand on that, and I want to go back to Senator Inhofe and Senator Reid's question or comment relative to why you did not vote to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization. Iran is the #1 terrorist sponsoring state in the world. I don't think there's any disagreement about that. I want you to expand on your position on a nuclear weaponized Iran and talk about red lines. If your position is truly prevention and not containment, Chuck, what is the red line? What is the point? We know there's some things happening over there right now that are very serious. So how far do we go? Do you still advocate direct negotiations with Iran, as you said, and you made clear that all options were on the table, and you've stated again that military options is one of those? If you will, talk about direct negotiation. We've never negotiated with a terrorist state. Why do you feel like that we ought to dialogue with them even on this issue today? And lastly, what alterations, if any, do you think are necessary to our military force posture in the Gulf region to deter Iranian regional ambitions and support international diplomatic efforts to stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons capability? It's a broad statement on my part, broad question, but this is the issue from a national security standpoint, Chuck, and I'd like to be pretty specific.
Well, let's start with a specific question on a vote regarding designating the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization. You recall, because you were there were 22 senators who voted against that. The effort against it, the main point made on the floor of the Senate came from Senator Jim Webb. And his point was, we have never, ever designated a part of a legitimate government, a state. And when I say legitimate, it doesn't mean that we agree with Iran, but it is a member of the United Nations. Almost all of our allies have embassies in Iran. So that's why I note an elected legitimate government, whether we agree or not. But we have never made any part of a legitimate independent government designated them or made them part of a terrorist organization. We've never done that. And so you say, well, so what? What's the big problem? The problem was that at least 22 of us believed, and there were both Republicans and Democrats, by the way, in that vote, but it was Jim Webb who was on the floor most of the time on it, said that if you do that, that's tantamount to giving the President of the United States authority to use military force against Iran without having to come back to get a resolution from or partner with or cooperate with the Congress of the United States. Essentially, if we vote for this, we're giving a president, in a sense, that authority. Now, you can agree or disagree with that, but I listened to that debate, and there was some pretty thoughtful debate, and that debate I thought was pretty powerful with me. We were already in 2 wars at the time, and I thought that this made sense, and so I voted against it. That's why I voted against that. You might also remember that Secretary-designate, almost Secretary of State Kerry voted against it. Then President Obama, or Senator Obama, he gave speeches against it. He didn't vote that day. Vice President Biden voted against it. Dick Lugar voted against it. There were some other Republicans. As to the Iranian red line, Persian Gulf, some of the Iranian questions you asked, I support the President's strong position on containment, as I've said, and I'll speak more specifically to a couple of the examples you used from my book. But his position, I think, is right. And when you ask the question about red line, well, a red line, I think the President has gone as far as he should go publicly on that. And he said clearly that, in his words, he has Israel's back. He said that his policy is not to allow the Iranians to get a nuclear weapon. What constitutes when action would be taken, I think that's always something that should not be discussed publicly or debated publicly or out in the public domain. Your quotations from my book, which you acknowledge as well, that I always said the military option should be on the table, and I had said that consistently, as well as engaging with Iran. I've always thought it's far smarter to approach these very serious threats, including Iran, probably as significant a threat as we have out there today, although North Korea is beyond a threat. It's a real nuclear power and quite unpredictable. I think Pakistan is another very complicated reality. But staying on Iran, I think we're far smarter to do what the President's been doing, which I laid out, by the way, in my book. I have a chapter on Iran. I have 2 chapters on Iraq. I have a chapter on the Middle East. Getting the world community behind us with these UN-sanctioned sanctions through the Security Council of the United Nations. These are tough sanctions. They are having a tremendous impact, you know that, on Iran. If, in fact, the military option is the only one required, I think we're always on higher ground in every way. International law, domestic law, people of the world, people of the region to be with us on this. If we have tried and we have gone through every possibility to resolve this in a responsible, peaceful way, rather than going to war. Everything I said in my book was about that. I don't have a problem with engaging. I think great powers engage. I think engagement is clearly in our interest. That's not negotiation. Engagement is not appeasement. Engagement is not surrender. I think if the time is right, the climate's right, the dynamics are right, we should find ways, if we can find ways. We can't force it. But I think we're always smarter and wiser to take that approach initially. Posture in the Persian Gulf. As you know, Senator, our 5th Fleet is located in the Persian Gulf in Bahrain. As you also know, we have a couple of carrier battle groups in that area. Our military posture there is very strong. It's very ready. It's very capable. These are contingencies and options that the Secretary of Defense, working with these chiefs, and the combatant commanders always have to give, and the President, and make sure that we are prepared. So let me stop there, and I may have missed some of the specific things that you wanted to discuss.
Well, I'm understanding to say that you're not ready to discuss red lines in a specific way. Am I hearing that right?
Well, I don't think that's my role now to start with. I am not the Secretary of Defense, but I think the President is wise in his course of action in not discussing that publicly. I think it's a far smarter way to handle it, and I think he has said what he needs to say. I think it's been understood in Iran. I think the world understands his position. By the way, I've just been handed a note that I misspoke and said I supported the President's position on containment. If I said that, it meant to say that obviously his position on containment, we don't have a position on containment. So I recognize I've had more attention paid to my words the last 8 weeks than I ever thought possible. But so I don't take any chances. Thank you.
I think I understood you correct on containment and prevention. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Just to make sure your correction is clear, we do have a position on containment, which is that we do not favor containment.
We do not favor containment. That's the President's position, and that was my position.
Thank you. I just want to clarify the clarify. Now,
if you need further clarification, that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Senator Chambliss.